close your eyes and allow the darkness to become your quiet companion. Tonight, we do not journey into a land of castles, but into the confines of a home shadowed by silence, where a simple moral truth was tested by death itself. This is the tale of the Wilful Child, a grim reminder of the price of disobedience. Let the stillness of this long, unsettling narrative lead you gently toward rest. In a village bordered by silent fields and thick, unassuming woods, lived a mother and her young son. The mother was a woman of profound, quiet love. Her days spent in the honest toil of maintaining their simple home. The son, however, possessed a spirit that was as sharp and unyielding as flint. He was, above all else, willful. His willfulness wasn't simple, youthful energy. It was a deep, unshakable refusal to submit to authority or sense. He listened only to the dictates of his own desire. If his mother asked him to fetch a pail of water, he would refuse, his small face setting into a mask of stone. If she directed him to help with chores, he would wander off, his mind deaf to her gentle pleas and firm commands. The mother tried every means of correction. She spoke with soft reason. She delivered firm warnings. She even resorted to swift punishments. But nothing could bend the boy's iron resolve. His heart, it seemed, was encased in an armor of self-interest. He had a deep, almost uncanny ability to ignore the sorrow and frustration reflected in his mother's loving eyes. She often spoke to him of piety and duty, of the essential kindness owed to those who feed and shelter us. She told him of the solemn duty of a child to listen to a parent's guidance, for it is guidance born of love, not malice. But the boy would merely stare through the window, his attention fixed on anything but her words. His disobedience was a silent, corrosive force, slowly chipping away at the quiet dignity of their home. The mother grieved this state of perpetual defiance deeply. She understood that a child's willfulness, left unchecked, would become a ruinous vice in adulthood, a solitary, hard shell that would push away love and kindness forever. She would often sit alone by the firelight, weeping silent, desperate tears, praying for her son's spirit to soften, for his heart to find its way back to warmth before it was too late. Then, with the sudden, brutal speed of a snapping twig, the sickness came. It struck the boy without warning, a fever that burned quickly and fiercely, leaving no time for repentance, no time for final lessons. The mother nursed him day and night, her love boundless and frantic, yet powerless against the grim advance of the ailment. In the dead of night, the sickness claimed him. The mother's sorrow was complete, absolute. Yet, even in the midst of her deep mourning, a cold certainty settled in her heart. Her son had died unforgiven, still bound by his deep, unyielding willfulness. He had passed from the world without ever uttering a final, heartfelt word of repentance or obedience. The burial was a simple, quiet affair. The boy was laid to rest in the small, somber churchyard, the earth piled high and marked by a plain wooden cross. The mother watched the burial, her eyes dry, her mind focused on the profound tragedy of his uncorrected spirit. She felt not just the grief of loss, but the heavy burden of a duty left unfulfilled. She had failed to bend his stubborn will while he lived. After the funeral, guests had departed, leaving the churchyard empty save for the slow settling of the soil. The mother returned home. The silence in the house was now total, broken only by the echo of her own slow, measured breathing. The chairs were empty. The table was set for one. The space where the boy's defiant spirit once resided was now a vacuum of absolute stillness. The very next morning, the mother returned to the grave. She carried a bouquet of freshly picked wild rosemary, intending to place them gently upon the raw earth. But, as she knelt beside the grave, her breath caught in her throat, chilled by a sudden, impossible sight. From the fresh soil, a small, pale mound of earth had been disturbed. And rising vertically from the ground, through the disturbed soil, was the arm of her dead child. It was the left arm, pale and stark, extending from the grave as if demanding recognition, or, worse, demanding attention. The hand was slightly clenched, the small fingers bent inward, a posture of refusal, of unyielding defiance. The sight was profoundly unsettling. It spoke not of a natural resting, but of a soul still bound to the world by its terrible, unbroken will. The mother, despite her terror, approached the arm with a mother's instinct. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and gently pushed the small, cold limb back down into the earth. She tried to cover it carefully with soil, patting the mound smooth. "Sleep now, my son," she whispered, her voice cracking with suppressed anguish. "You must find your rest. Let go of your defiance." She retreated, her mind battling with the impossible reality. She told herself it was a dream, a trick of the morning mind, a nightmare brought to life by her own deep-seated guilt over his willfulness. She stayed away from the churchyard for the rest of the day, seeking distraction in the monotonous tasks of her home. But the next morning, she returned, her heart filled with cold dread. And there it was again. The arm, rising once more from the grave, extending upward, a pale, terrible sentinel of unresolved defiance. This cycle became the mother's new, unending penance. Every morning, she would go to the grave, and every morning, the arm would be there, a stark, physical manifestation of her child's unbroken will. She would push it down, gently, lovingly, desperately. She would pile more earth, smooth the soil, place heavy stones upon the disturbed mound, hoping to pin the limb beneath the weight of the world. Yet, by the next dawn, the arm would have defeated the earth, rising once more, pale and stark against the morning light. The mother grew gaunt and weary. The silence of her home was now replaced by the agonizing dread of the churchyard. Her soul wrestled with a terrifying question. How could she bring peace to a soul that refused to surrender even to the power of death? She knew the cause was the boy's unrelenting willfulness or will that had defied her in life and now defied the very laws of mortality. She sought advice from no one. How could she explain such a grim, unnatural phenomenon? Her grief was private, and her burden was unique. She knew, deep in her weary spirit, that the solution could only be found between herself and the restless earth. One evening, as she sat alone, watching the last embers of the fire fade, the answer came to her with a cold, clear certainty. The boy's spirit understood only correction. His willfulness had never been truly broken by love or reason. He required the final, firm discipline he had evaded in life. She realized, with profound, heart-wrenching agony, that she had to do the one thing a mother's hand should never do. The following morning, the mother went to the grave, her heart heavy, her steps slow and final. The arm was there, stark and accusing against the dawn. But this time, she carried nothing to conceal it. In her hand, she carried a switcher-long, thin willow branch, dry and firm, a symbol of the discipline she had hesitated to deliver in life. She stood over the grave, looking down at the pale, unyielding arm. She spoke to the earth, to the silence, to the very spirit of her child. "My son," she said, her voice a low, raw whisper of sorrow and necessity. "You would not listen to my words when you lived. Your willfulness was stronger than my love. Now, you defy the very rest that death offers. I must now do what I failed to do when you were a boy." With a sudden, terrible resolve, she raised the willow switch high above her head, and then, with a swift, firm movement, she struck the small, dead arm rising from the earth. The sound was a quick, dry whack that echoed unnaturally in the stillness of the churchyard. She did it again, not in anger, but in the profound, heart-shattering act of a final, necessary correction. She struck the arm several times, each blow a release of years of sorrow, fear, and unfulfilled parental duty. As the final blow landed, the unyielding arm did not merely sink back into the earth, it vanished. It was pulled down swiftly and decisively, as if a great, unseen weight had finally claimed it. The earth settled immediately, smoothing itself over the grave, leaving the surface perfectly undisturbed and quiet. The defiant mound of soil was gone. The mother stood there for a long time, the willow switch falling softly from her numb fingers. She did not weep. The terror was gone, replaced by a deep, weary peace. She knew, with a certainty that settled into her bones, that the spirit of her willful child had finally found its rest. The curse of his defiance was broken, and his soul was no longer bound to the restless earth. She returned to the grave the next day, and the day after. The grave remained undisturbed. The earth was flat, quiet, and still. The willful child was finally at peace. The mother's heart, though forever scarred by the loss, was at last quieted by the knowledge that, through a terrible, final act of love and discipline, she had fulfilled her ultimate duty. The story serves as a profound, dark reminder that children must yield to their parents' will while they live, lest their spirits find no rest in the eternal slumber. Allow this quiet tale of obedience and final peace to guide you now into your own deep, unburdened sleep. Rest now and surrender completely to the dark quiet of the night. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more tales to guide you into slumber.